Good morning, Rebels, and welcome back to my life. Okay, so you know how I was telling you that a big surprise sale day was coming up? Well, today is the day. Today you can get every single book in my entire library for only 99 cents each, which, let's face it, is kind of a big deal. What that means in terms of numbers is that you can pick up all of my books totaling more than 1 million words of indie fiction for only $9, when normally it would cost you about 50. So you can click this sign right here, or the very first link in the description below the video for a page on my website where all the books are just listed out, and there's links to get all of them. It's all good. Go check them all out. They're all good. But let's say you've already read my books, or most of them anyway, so what's in this sale for you? Well, today, at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm going to send an email out to my email list and to my patrons on patreon.com, and in that email is going to be a little share button to share the sale with your friends and family and so on and so forth, and everybody who clicks that share button is going to get 2 exclusive ebooks that aren't available for sale anywhere. Only a few people in the history of the world have ever read those ebooks, so if you want to join that number, go into the description, join the email list, or become a patron. But for the rest of you, the people who haven't read all my books, or have only read 1 or 2, let me give you a quick recap of my books and my writing career so you can decide which titles pique your interest. The very first book I ever wrote was called Touch Trilogy. It was based on a short film that I made many years ago when I was still learning how to be a filmmaker. It's about a girl named Sally who can see people's thoughts when she touches their skin. But the process is very invasive, and she usually doesn't like what she sees in other people's heads, so she lives a very reclusive life, trying not to have any human contact. But there is one neighbor in her apartment building who's very nice to her. One day, that neighbor is killed, and the cops can't figure out what happened, so Sally decides to use her ability to do some investigating on her own, which starts her on a journey that will teach her a lot about herself and her gift, but also about other people. After I published that book, and it was, frankly, more popular than I expected, I decided to branch out a little bit. You guys probably know that I don't like horror very much at all, but I had just watched Zombieland, and I wanted to try something in the zombie comedy genre. So I wrote Non-Zombie, about a nerd named Cliff who's doing really well in the zombie apocalypse. I mean, he's seen every zombie movie, big fan of The Walking Dead, he knows what to do, he takes care of himself. I mean, Cliff's been a fat nerd all his life, and people have always made fun of him for it, but now those people are zombies, and he gets to cut their heads off with an axe. It's great! But one day, while protecting his son from a zombie attack, Cliff gets bit, and he thinks, well, that's the end of the line. But after he goes through the transformation, he's a zombie, but he can still think, and he doesn't know why. So Cliff and his wife and son have to figure out what happened to him and hopefully find a cure. Non-Zombie was followed up by Non-Zombie 2 and will one day be followed up by Non-Zombie 3. After those 2 books, I novelized an idea for a TV series that I'd had. I have always been intrigued by the idea of teenage girls that are innocent looking but raised in circumstances that made them a little bit crazy. Whether you're talking Natalie Portman in The Professional, or more appropriately, Chloe Moretz from Kick-Ass, teenage girls who are a little bit crazy are just super interesting. So Hit Girls is about a young teenager named Nikki who witnesses the death of both of her parents and goes a little bit nuts. Fortunately, her older sister Jessie just happens to be an assassin, so Nikki trains up and the 2 of them go hunting for the people that killed their parents. Warning, that book is not for kids. Not for kids. Not for kids. Right after that, I started working with my oldest friend, Z.C. Bolger. Zach had already written a book for kids that was received very well and got great reviews, and we wanted to do a project together. I was a super huge fan of the Animorphs series of books when I was a teenager, and I wanted to do something in that vein, but in fantasy. So the Realm Keepers series was born, and we wrote 2 books, Midrealm and Wormspire, about 6 mismatched high school kids who start journeying to another realm every time they go to sleep, and they become very powerful wizards and have to save a kingdom. There's evil and romance and magic and dragons, and it's very much like The Breakfast Club meets Harry Potter. Now at this point, I'd been working exclusively as an indie artist for 2 years, and I had learned a lot about independent art versus industry art, which I had dabbled in back in my days as a freelance filmmaker. And I also wanted to write something more serious and literary, and I had an idea for a band movie that I'd wanted to write for ages. So I took 7 months off of writing fantasy and sci-fi and wrote the literary novel Rebel Yell, about an indie singer-songwriter in Los Angeles named Steve who's offered the deal of a lifetime. And also the chance to work with Haley Savage, the lead singer of the biggest rock band in the world, which Steve completely idolizes. But of course the producer who gives him this deal isn't interested in Steve's talent, only in the money he thinks he can make off of him. So Steve is forced to ride the fine line between what he wants to achieve as a musician and what the label wants him to do as a business enterprise. After Rebel Yell, I was ready to return to fantasy, and I had this big, epic fantasy series that I'd been planning for almost as long as I'd been writing. But I didn't feel like I was ready to write it yet. I didn't know enough about my world, and the backstory wasn't all there. So I started a different fantasy series in the same world called Nightblade, where I could introduce myself and my readers to the 9 kingdoms where the epic fantasy series would take place. Nightblade is about a very clever girl named Lauren who was raised in a small obscure forest village by abusive parents and has always dreamed about running away from her mom and dad and becoming a great thief who rights society's wrongs, a Robin Hood type character. But when she does manage to escape from home in the company of a fugitive wizard, she finds out she's actually kind of terrible at being a thief. And in trying to start her life of crime, Lauren attracts not only the attention of the king's law, but other elements of the criminal underworld, and her life becomes one big flight from danger to danger, just trying to stay alive. Nightblade was shortly followed by Mystic, and now every weekday on my Blog and Novel YouTube channel, you can see me working on the 3rd book in the series, Darkfire. So that's it. That's the entire library. 3 years of work, over 1 million words, and all for only $1 each. $9 total, which is like less than 20% of what you would pay at full price. If you want to check them out, click on the very first link in the description below to see them all listed out with links to get them on Kindle and Kobo and iBooks and everywhere. I hope you'll check a few of them out, or all of them. I'm not going to stop you. And don't forget, if you want those exclusive ebooks that hardly anybody has ever read, you got to sign up for the email list or become a patron at Patreon. I'm very excited about this, Rebels. Enjoy your reading, and even though tomorrow is Saturday, because it's April, I will see you tomorrow. Maybe. Bye!